Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Welcome to a special episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is Bruce Hutchin, the host, executive producer, and we're heading to Wisconsin, around Sullivan, Wisconsin to be exact, and we're going to connect with Dan Infalt. And if you're a whitetail hunter, you know who Dan is. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got The Hunting Beast. He knows how to DIY mature bucks, and he's got it down to a science as far as this man's concerned about finding the buck beds and then finding the best way to hunt in the cattails and in those swamps. So, Dan, welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous.
Well, thanks for having me, Bruce.
It's exciting to see a Wisconsin guy, and I went to lacrosse, married a Green Bay girl, and the bucks we have coming out of our state are, everybody knows about Buffalo County. We don't have to chat about that, but there's so many other beautiful, wonderful, mature bucks that come out of our state that really nobody knows about. And a lot of them come from DIY hunters, guys just like yourself that have figured it out, and they just love to hunt so much, but they won't be at ATA. They won't be on Field and Stream or Sportsman Channel, but they just love to hunt. And that's a sense I get about you. We haven't met personally, but I've read up on you enough. Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
What drives you to that? What drives you to be so good at a skill, but simple terms, not give a rip about being on the cover of anybody's magazine?
It's really the personal passion. I mean, there's two kinds of people. I mean, some people want everybody to see them and they want to glow, and some people are looking to accomplish things on their own. And I think we go through phases. When I was younger, I think I liked the attention, when I got big buck stuff. And I think after a while, it became more me against the whitetail kind of thing. Comes with age, I guess.
Me against the whitetail. That might be the name of your show. Because, folks, if you've ever gone toe-to-toe with a mature buck, and he'll win more times than not. I'm not going to say 90% of the time. I hope it's 60, 70, 80% of the time he wins. But when you do get that win, it's a wonderful thing because it's this not putting another whitetail on the ground, what it took to get into it. And let's sit and camp around that. What does it take for you to put a mature buck on the ground?
A lot of work. A lot of people think Wisconsin's a cakewalk because there's a number of big bucks that are shot here. But really, it's a tough state to hunt because of the number of hunters. I mean, there's cushy spots on private land and stuff, but I don't really seek that out. I like to seek out deer on a level playing field where everybody else goes, and I like the public land, and it's pressured and it's hard. It takes a lot of scouting, a lot of work, and a lot of planning, and a lot of conniving to get onto those big bucks. You might hunt 3,000-acre marsh or something that has 3 bucks that I'm willing to shoot. 3,000 acres. You got to get on those bucks. You got to find out where their core areas are, get in on them and kill them. And it's not as easy as one would think.
Now, I know where core areas are on the farm I hunt along the Bearable River. And there were 3 shooter bucks, 3 mature bucks on it. We took one. I had one in front of me and I didn't shoot him. And so, and the 2 others we never saw. Finding core areas on ag land split up by oak ridges, and you got pinch points and funnels. Man, when I go into the cattails, I'm hurt. How does the guy figure that out?
To me, that the simplest ground there is cattail marshes. It's like the simplest thing because you can look at an aerial map of it and you can see it plain as day. You can stand on a hill and look down it and see where they go. And what you're really looking at is the transition. I mean, there are some bedding areas in the cattails if you have higher cattails. But most of the time, the beds are at the points of islands. They're at little fingers of trees that go out into the cattails. They're at those transitions where timber meets cattails. They're not out in the middle of it. So that makes it easy. And for me, I can look at a map of a cattail marsh and really easily pick out the key spots. And what's interesting is, as soon as you get in that water a little bit, even in the high population hunter areas like I'm hunting, you just lose all the hunters. It's like they're afraid to get their feet wet or something. But that's where the deer are. I think people probably watching TV and Sportsman Channel and stuff get this idea in their head that deer live in the woods. And they don't. They're going down in that water. They're going out into that thick terrain. But all the hunters are hunting in the wood.
I know the Baraboo River, the times when we would drive that, when I started whitetail hunting, we would actually drive the river bottoms. And guys on both sides of the rivers and standers half a mile down. And it was interesting. We wouldn't get in the river, but we were wet and we didn't have hip boots or nothing. We just had jeans and rubber boots. And we always kicked big bucks out. But when you went back in to try to hunt them one-on-one and figure it out, man, they schooled me every time. I mean, I failed class. I wasn't paying attention.
I find a lot of my great bedding areas doing drives. I like to do deer drives too with a couple dedicated hardcore guys. That's taught me a lot of those bedding areas. And then what you got to do there, though, is not just go back one-on-one and try to hunt it after you looked at it once going through doing the drive. You got to go back during winter and really, really look at that. Look at where those beds are and think about why they're in the spots they are. Some of them are wind-based if they're up on the edge of timber, and if they're out a little further, maybe they're not. But you got to look at the trails going in and out of them. And the good thing about cattails versus like timber or farm country or anything is those cattails are real thick and dense. So there's only going to be so many trails, and those trails are the trails you're coming out on. So they're easy to cut off. So one thing I noticed too doing deer drives is now there's one public marsh that we've been doing drives in for 20 years. And every year it's the same drive, the same spot, the same point that the big buck comes off of. So they got patterns and they've got spots that they bed and spots that the mature bucks prefer. And it can take you a little bit of time to learn that. But once you learn a marsh, the same key spots will pay off over and over again. To make a point of that, I can think of one tree that if I took you there, you'd say, well, what's special about this? But I've killed 16 big bucks out of that tree. And I can take you to another tree I've killed a dozen out of. And I only hunt those spots like once a year, so I don't burn them out.
One day? Just one day a year?
One day, one or two. Sometimes I don't even hunt them because I get onto something else or whatever. There's certain key spots, and it's because of the way where the deer are bedding and stuff. And a lot of people don't really take bedding into account enough. They think those deer travel around a lot during daylight, and sometimes they do, especially younger deer. But if you're targeting mature bucks, those bucks are literally just moving like 100 yards, 50 yards in daylight. A lot of times I'm listening to them or watching them get out of a bed in those marshes and swamps and killing them 75 yards from their bed at closing time. How would you do if you're 200 yards away sitting over a rub line?
You would.
The biggest mistake I see people making is you walk through this timber and stuff. Every place you see a big rub, you look up and there's a tree stand there.
Why is that?
There's no regard for anything else. It's because they know a big buck was there. And that's the way they think they got to scout. And I think a lot of that has to do with the perception they get out of these shows and stuff nowadays. I've sat and watched the hunting channel for a while, and you sit there and you say, well, what did I learn? All I did was watch a guy shoot a deer and tell me how great he is, but I haven't learned anything. And I think a lot of people watch that stuff and they think that they got to mimic what those people are doing, and they forget that those people are on huge leases that they're the only one that has access to or managed outfitted land. It's a huge difference when you start getting on public pressured deer. You remember, like, almost every mature buck I've ever shot, when we skin them out, we find a broadhead or a slug in them, or multiple.
Yep.
They learn some hard lessons, but they don't live to be 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah. I think of this year, we took a mature doe, and she was off the river bottom, and we hung her up, and we started taking her apart, and all of a sudden, her whole front shoulders and her spine just let go, and the only thing hanging in the air were her hindquarters and the back straps. And we went, what the heck? My buddy came running, Hutch, you got to see this, you got to see this. And what had happened is somebody had shot her back in her spine, but it didn't sever it. There was enough bone structure just to hold her, and she was healthy. She wasn't in bad shape, but it was just that fringe that little bit was holding together. As soon as the muscle groups went, she just came apart, and they were astounded how resilient, strong, pick an adjective, that deer was.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was. We just could not believe it. And the bone it looked like it had been sawed, so it wasn't a car crash or anything. It was a broadhead that cut it. All the muscle groups held her together. And she was healthy. I mean, she was hanging out with the rest of the does and living normally. So, folks, deer are tough. You got to take ethical shot and all that. But getting back to what you said, when we think about what we see on TV and reality, I don't think they parallel. Your thought?
That's absolutely right. And they don't parallel.
So how do we change that? Or if we want to change that, or just let the people that really want to become hunters find a Dan Infalt?
No, I've been trying to change the world, as you probably know. I put out those DVDs, and I got a YouTube channel and all that where I really teach tactics that are real world tactic, public land stuff. And there's a lot more of me showing up out there nowadays. It's getting better. I think there's a lot more people learning woodsmanship and learning the skills than there was 10 years ago.
Because the sign is all there. If you get in Wisconsin, you will find all sorts of sign, as you know and are sharing here on the show, is to read that sign and take it back to where the whole Bucks Core area. Let's talk about what the sign is around a Bucks Core area.
Okay, for core area, for me, I might be referring to something different than what people are thinking, so I'll kind of define it for you. I'm talking about a bedding area. I'm looking for bedding areas. I'm realizing that those mature bucks aren't moving very far from bedding, so I'm camping out just outside of those bedding areas. I spend a lot of my winter time in there learning those bedding areas and learning their routes in and out, and then I leave them be and I don't go back until it's kill time. And then, too, I might not even go back. I might just go through, and if I see a rub line, I think, oh, okay, there's a bedding area over here. That's probably where that deer is coming from, and maybe I throw a stand at it one day. That's the way I get into it. So I look at it like a deer's got like this area I want to call like his safe zone. So if you drew a circle around a bedding area, say a 100-yard circle, that he feels while he's bedded in there, he's safe. So everything that's going on around in that circle. And if you tried getting inside that circle, you'd probably blow him out of there. My goal is to get on the edge of that circle. And I feel that when he gets to the point where he's not feeling safe, it's about the time it's getting dark on most days. So that's where I want to be.
So as you know, rub lines are rub lines, and some say he's going east, and some say he's going west, and some are community where, quote unquote, Bucks areas come together or conjoin, and they're kind of just saying, I'm here and you're there, and I'm going this way and you're going that way. When you think of all that, how can the rub lines take me back to his core area?
Okay, I'm probably not going to give you the answer you want, but I'm going to give you the answer I believe. And that's, I think most people, when they see those rub lines and they see those rubs, they get all excited. And what it tells me, personally, is that there's a buck there worthy of looking for, if it's a big rub or a high rub, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to do is find those bedding areas and find that sign near bedding areas, because those rubs are meaningless if they're in the middle of the woods. It could be at midnight that deer did that. It could be 2 a.m. It could be that deer is a mile from there, and he's coming through there to feed or chase does or something. He's laying a rub down, but he's nowhere near there during daylight. So I want to find that sign where, to me, it's daylight sign, which means it's coming out of potential bedding. That tells me that, okay, if this deer's bedding here, he's here during the day. You know, where is he in daylight? So I'm looking for that sign near the bedding area. So I really look at terrain more than I look at big rubs and stuff. So I'm looking at how the terrain lays out, where the deer should be bedded, and then I'm going to those spots and looking for those rubs coming in and out. I'm not saying a big rub doesn't catch my attention, because it tells me there's a big buck in the area, but it doesn't catch my attention to the degree it attracts attention from other people. And if you just look at it like this, if you could go find a rub line, that meant you're going to kill a big buck, everybody in this country would be killing big bucks every year. How many people are setting up over that sign and they're not doing anything? I mean, they're not killing bucks. That's the most common way people set up. They set up over a rub, or they set up over a scrape line or a rub line or pinch point. And if they're not killing deer every year, well, I potentially have opportunities to kill big bucks every year. And I'm not concentrating on rubs, and I'm not concentrating on scrapes. I'm concentrating on how they come in and out of bedding. When you look at rut, now I've killed a lot of bucks during the rut. Now you just take this one thing here. I've killed a lot of bucks on pinch points. I've killed a lot of bucks on food. But when I look at my, like, say, top 10 bucks, the ones that are 5 years old or older, every one of those was shot near bedding. It's like you get to a whole different class of animal. You can shoot 2 and 3 year old bucks and pinch points and stuff, but it's like once they get to that 5-year-old range, they just don't make mistakes. And you got to get close. Most of those big bucks, I'm literally within 100 yards that are bedding in marsh terrain.
Yeah, how do you do that? Okay, I get it with the wind. Are you running and gunning? You're not hanging a stand and leaving it, hanging a stand the day you're hunting.
You have to be mobile, because those deer are, I don't know how to say it, but they are way more intelligent than what people make them out to be. Like I said,
not for this guy. I'm going to raise my hand. I've got enough Fs. Dad, I've failed so many times.
Those deer, if they come out of that bed and they smell you've been there, they ain't coming out the next day in that spot, especially pressured land. I mean, you might get away with that on managed land or something, but you get into this public land and you make one mistake, it's over. So the way to do it is to really plot and plan. And I try to figure out when a deer's bedding in a certain area, because there's time frames that those bedding areas peak. And you start to see year after year, it's the same time frame you see of the caliber you're after in those bedding areas. Even call certain bedding areas primary bedding areas. And what that is a bedding area where bucks bed there all year. And there ain't as many of those. More like seasonal bedding. Seasonal bedding will be like around a food source. Like say they bed in a certain spot when acorns are dropping because there's a little island out there that's full of oaks. There might be some seasonal bedding near a cornfield or a bean field or something. Well, primary bedding, they'll bed there all year, but there'll still be peaks when mature bucks bed there more than the other buck. And you get the timing down and you really start getting something going. But that takes a lot more effort. A lot of times I'll look at a bedding area and I'll think I got a grasp on it just by how it lays out. And I'll say, oh, they're here at this time or that time or whatever. A lot of times I'm wrong. Sometimes it takes a few seasons throwing sits at something. But one thing is, like, if you go into a bedding area and it's just tore up with rubs, I can tell you it's probably pre-rut bedding there. You got a bedding area that's obviously got some big buck sign in it, but there ain't a lot of big rubs. Maybe it's early season.
Huh. Okay, go back on what you just said, because I spent some time chasing some whitetail in Nebraska. In fact, tomorrow. And I found an area, what I call the coal area, set up. I wasn't 100 yards from when the buck got up. And the way I found it is it was all ripped up with rubs. I mean, there were rubs. There were 20 rubs and good size one. And I knew he was bedding there because it was perfect bedding area. Everything was right. And I set up and a small buck came out, not the big one, but I watched him get out of his bed. So I said, does it mean that a core area, when you see a lot of rubs, that's where he's spending a lot of time and he's just getting ready for the rut? And what you just said resonated with me because he was spending his time getting ready for the rut, because this was in early mid-October. And because he got out of his bed, went to a tree and rubbed. The buck did. I had the part figured, but the real big buck wasn't there. His dad wasn't there. His uncle wasn't there. It was a little guy.
Right. And that's the thing that a lot of guys don't get too, is those core bedding areas, or primary, like I like to call them, multiple bucks bed there. So you might go there one day and a small buck comes out and you think, oh, this is just a small buck, and you move on. That doesn't mean there's not a big buck bedding there. I think back to a very large buck I shot in the Marsh near my home, and that was back when we had multiple tags because of the CWD hunting. And there was a rub line that came in and out of this bedding area. And it was a couple hundred yards from the bedding area, but I knew when that rub line opened up, there's something good in that bedding area. And when it opened up, I went in there, and that day I shot that big buck. Well, a few days later, I go back through there, and I'm going to go hunt someplace else. And I look, and that rub line is still being used. And I thought, well, what the heck? And I went through another sit over there, and another very large buck out of the exact same bed that the buck I shot got out of. But he got by me without me getting an arrow in him. But I didn't have an ethical shot. But the point is, back to back, 2 days in a row, two big bucks came out of that same bed. Two different big bucks.
Have you ever trout fished?
I've seen that before.
Have you ever trout fished?
Yeah, a little bit. Probably not as much as you, but.
Yeah. So, folks, what he just said, if you find holding water in a river, not a lake, but a river, you're fishing streams, big streams, little streams, rivers, whatever. If you find a 20-inch plus trout in a specific place, within 2 or 3 days, there'll be another 20 to 24-inch trout or bigger in the exact same place. Why? Because it's perfect for them. That's an interesting correlation. I never heard that, but that makes perfect sense, because if it had the same qualities and safety and all the things that other mature buck wanted, then the other guy's going to slip in there because I got the best place in the marsh.
Well, let me throw this past you. The marsh behind my house I've gotten to know very well. I probably know of 100 different bedding areas in this marsh. But if I see a mature buck in an area, he's normally come out of one of 5 bedding areas. They're taking those primary best bedding areas and they're owning them. And when you kill him, another one's moving in. And it goes right back into what I was telling you earlier about how those certain trees, I've killed so many big bucks out of the same tree over and over again. Kill one, another one moves in. It actually gets kind of boring for me once you figure a property out. And I kind of like to move around because it gets boring if you just go on setting up and killing. For me, it's that you start losing that whole...
Yeah, that isn't you.
Chase, figuring it out. Right, exactly. I like the chess game.
Yeah, that's not you. I mean, that isn't what you're about. Talking about thermal cover, now during the wintertime, do the mature bucks change it up on the budding area because of the thermal cover? Because they seek that out.
Yes, they do. Even without the thermal cover, they come out of the marshes and swamps. I mean, some of them stay in there, but the majority of them come out of those marshes and swamps, and they go in more like the higher ground. Like right now, our marshes are frozen, and I'm still hunting, and I'm finding all those big bucks bedded on the edges of the marsh instead of in their bedding areas, and actually in spots where you think, wow, this doesn't seem like a great spot. I think they don't like, number one, walking on ice. Number two, what you said, the thermal cover. They start going into like thicker pines and stuff like that. You start seeing this time of year, you see a little bit more of the open cover bedding where they'll sit in the sun, where they avoid the sun most of the year.
Kind of like our elk do. Elk will be on the south-facing slopes during the day because just of the thermal.
Yeah.
Yeah. They absorb the heat. When you look at a composite, you've been doing this, 30 years, 40 years?
Yeah. 30, 40 years, yeah.
30, 40 years. So when you started out, who helped you get along? Who kicked you in the and said, you need to do this?
That's an interesting question because it comes up a lot. I started hunting in the 70s as a kid, and my father worked 2 jobs so that we could live in the country. We were poor. The old saying, one shot, one kill. When my dad said that, he had a different meaning. It was because we didn't want to pay for a second bullet because we were so poor, he worked all the time, and I went hunting on my own, and I learned a lot of what I knew on my own. And I started out mostly as a killer, just putting food on the table. I did a lot of hunting and a lot of killing, and I got good at killing. And as I got older and we started getting where we had more money and stuff, then I got into starting to hold out for bucks. And I think that a lot of people skip that phase nowadays. They want to go straight to big bucks, and that's a difficult task. You got to learn how to kill deer before you can start killing big bucks because they're a little harder. But that's what I did, is I killed a lot of deer for food, and then progressed into wanting to shoot bucks and then wanting to shoot bigger bucks. And, I got pretty good at killing big bucks. And I think one big changing factor for me was the late 80s. I met up with Andre D'Acquisto before anybody really knew who he was. And we both hunted the same land, so we ran into each other. And we kind of challenged each other. We were both killing a lot of big bucks back then. I think we learned a lot from each other, and we both had kind of the same mindset. I mean, he did some things different than me, and I did things different than him. But I remember one time, me and him, we went to this big swamp, and it was probably, I want to say 2 or 3 square miles. And we were going to check this out because we heard there's some big bucks in there. And we both went in there and scouted all day separately because we didn't hunt together. We just talk about the hunt afterwards or whatever. But we went out to the hunt that evening, and he went one way and I went another. And in that 3-mile swamp, we met at the same tree we both.
And went different ways.
Yeah. So you look at those swamps and you start to get when you get good at it, you start to get the concept down where you just know where they're going to be.
What did you say then? Did you flip a coin?
Well, I ended up hunting there. That's just the way Andre was. So, yeah. But we pretty much started avoiding the same areas after that.
That's a story worth telling. I'm thinking from the back part of, okay, one way, you spent all time scouting yourself, and you both came to the same conclusion, but went different ways and ended up at the same place. Everything, volumes of information and knowledge and application and all the things that some people do well and other people do parts of it. And guys like you just got it down. But here you got 2 guys did the exact same thing because did you kill a buck out of it that night?
I did not, no.
That was, I guess,
a spot to be. It just wasn't one home that day.
Yeah. And folks,
and
that
happens
does happen.
A lot. A lot of these guys listening to this will go, I don't know. And then they'll walk onto a marsh and they'll go look at a point or something and they'll find all these rubs coming from a bed and they'll go, I got it. This is it. This is what he was talking about. And it'll be the perfect setup. And they think they're going to go sit there and they're going to kill a buck. Well, it seems that way. And some of these spots will look so good when you get in there and look at them. You got to realize, like look at me this year. What is it, December 11th?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this every day of the season, and I still ain't got my buck yet. So it's not as easy as it sounds. But
well, you passed some bucks. I can guarantee you let some bucks walk.
I'm letting bucks walk past, and probably some bucks that some of the people listening would shoot. But the fact is that I do a lot of sits where it looks like a great spot, and nothing walks out, nothing comes out that day, where you don't see a thing. And
but that's hunting because
see more deer. In a lot of cases, I'd probably see more deer going and sitting in the oaks or going and sitting on a field edge but I'm certainly not going to see that target buck. He ain't going to be there in daylight.
Long distance scouting. Okay, we got this marsh. There's some marshes. I'm thinking of some of the marshes I've tried to get in, not very successfully, but I can look at them from a hilltop and I can look down on them. And especially the Baraboo River, which is this year it was terrible because of all the floods it had. We just couldn't hunt it. If you had a canoe, I guess you could have. But anyway, so long distance scouting, do you apply that at all, or you just do it on Onyx Maps and Google Earth and all the tools that we have?
No, I usually use like Google Earth and mapping and stuff. I like Google Earth because it's got a feature on there where you can go backdate maps. So you go back and look at old maps in different years, and the reason that that's helpful is you get an image from a certain time frame during the year or whatever, and it'll be much more clearer than the rest, or show the sign much better. And you can actually zoom in on a cattail marsh, and you can see the deer trails. And what's interesting about that is those deer trails stay the same spot for years, and there's not very many of them. And you can look and you can see on an island or something, you'll see a whole spider web of trails going to it, and you can say, oh, there's something bedding there, or there wouldn't be all those trails going to it.
Right, it's a hub. Call them hubs. Yeah,
right, yeah, that's a good call for it. And you can see that real easy on those maps. And one thing to remember about those cattails is there's not apple trees out there. There's not, acorns falling into the water, and they're walking through water to their belly in a lot of those cattails. There's only really one reason they're going out in those cattails, is to find a bedding spot that's secure. So when you find those trails in there, they're going to or coming from bedding back in those cattails. So that makes it a little more clear what's going on back there.
When you look at the swamps, how far away is the ag line? How far away is food? Now, I know some Oak Ridges swamp and cattails. I get that. But we're talking about corn or alfalfa or clover.
There's usually something within a mile or two, but those deer will go a lot further than what you think, too. I can think about a time I was hunting this island. Now, this island that I'm thinking of is unique that it's very remote. And I got to go through waist-deep water to get there for quite a ways. And I get there, and there's a good bedding area off the backside of it. And if I go out there when there's been pressure, like, say, pheasant hunting starts, or it's been going on for 2-3 days, or gun deer season's been going on for 3-4 days, I can guarantee I'll see a lot of deer. But mature buck sightings out there are pretty much uniform. Early season, late season, there's always mature bucks back there, few. But the smaller deer will get pressured and move back there. Otherwise, they're bedding more towards the more inexperienced deer, or bedding more towards the food. And I can think of, if you go out the back way of that island and walk the other way, you'd have to walk through about 2 to 2.5 miles of cattails in water to come out on the other side. And I can remember seeing a big buck get up in there 20 minutes before dark and head that way. And that's the way he's going to get the food. So security is more important than the food. They'll walk 2 miles to food, but they got to have that security. They got to have a bed that they trust, a place to sleep where they trust that they're not going to get hurt. And the thing with marshes and swamps is they like to surround themselves with water. They like to get out in an area that's surrounded by water. And I think a big part of that is coyotes don't go out in that water. You find coyotes out on all that dry land, but you do not see them in that marsh until the marsh freezes, which ironically is the same time I see the deer come back out of the marshes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think a lot of what they do is based on natural predators, whether they're still in play or not. I mean, we're more in play than the natural predators, but even us. I mean, I go sit on that marsh during gun season. There might be, the whole parking lot might be full. There might be 50 cars in the parking lot. I get out in that marsh, I can't see orange for a mile. But you go into a wood lot, and there's a guy every 50 feet. It looks like a pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
So where are the deer going to be?
Where the people aren't.
Right.
The thing I like about where we hunt, we have basically a sanctuary right across the road. And so when the banging starts from the west, this ripples through. And by the time it gets to here, we've got deer that don't live on our farm, but they're coming through because they're going to the sanctuary where you can't hunt. I mean, just can't hunt. And so we've killed some nice buck just be sitting on those funnels. They're going to go through here, and you just sit there and you just wait, and they do that. When you think about your gear, you mentioned your mobile. I call that run and gunning. Other people, I think Todd Pringnes taught me that a number of years ago about how he runs and guns, and you call it mobile hunting. Is there any difference, or is it basically the same?
It's kind of the same. I'm going in with equipment where I can get in. I got to be really quiet because of how close I'm getting bedding. And I got to have stuff I can quietly and silently climb a tree and get into place in. I don't want to use a climber. Most people that hunt mobile want to use climbers. The thing I don't like about them is it's restricts you to what tree you can be in. A lot of times in public land, you can't cut limbs, you can't cut shooting lanes, and even if you could, if you do, you tip the deer off. So I want to go in there once and make a kill, and I want to go in there clean and quiet, and I'm going in real slow, one step at a time, and I'm planning my path to the tree. I don't need equipment dragging on branches and stuff, making hollow tube noises or any kind of noise. I want it confined to my back real tight, and I want to slide in there and get in the exact tree I need to be in. I'm testing the wind as I go. I always got a pocket full of milkweed, and I'm checking the wind as I go in. And I'm looking at what it's doing, and I'm deciding from a distance before I get over there exactly what tree I want to get in. And the reason for that is because if they cross your scent trail walking, they'll figure out you're there. It doesn't have to be a target deer. A different buck comes out or a doe or something comes out and smells where you walked and has a little fit or something. They can blow your whole hunt. So I'm really careful about how I go in and direction-wise and what the wind's doing and pick my tree. And a lot of times I'll hunt the same spot, but I'm hunting a different tree. And in doing so, I don't want to be restricted to hunting that perfect straight tree. So I'm taking a stand and sticks in. And I'm being really careful about how much noise I make. And if you were 15 yards from me, I don't think you'd hear me set up.
With a hang on and sticks?
Yeah, I'm very, very quiet about it. So the other thing I do is, because I'm in such close proximity to the beds, I'm really careful about how I climb. In those marshes, a lot of times if you get too high, they can look up from their bed in the cattails and see you in the tree climbing. So you got to know where those beds are, know how high you can get, know if you can get high, if you can't get high. And I like to climb the back side of the tree, so I'm facing the deer, so I can look around the tree towards the deer. And I got the tree in front of me as camouflage, and I can see how high I can get while looking kind of towards where the deer would be, so I know when to stop, put my stand up or whatever. So it's really kind of, even the way I set up is kind of down to a T.
Have you ever seen tines when you get up and all of a sudden you look out and there's tines?
Yeah, I got that one YouTube video. I don't know if you've seen it. It's the number 3 video on the Extreme Whitetail Tactics YouTube channel. Climb this tree, and I know where the bed is, and I'm climbing it, looking around a tree just as I was just describing, and I can see a 10-pointer bedded there. And while I'm looking at him bedded, I'm setting up this stand super slow, and I climb in that tree and get my shot up after he gets up. Sometimes I can see the deer from the tree, but usually not. Usually they're down into something. I've climbed up a tree and had him jump up and take off to the area, and one's bedded a little satellite more towards you, and he's not in that primary bed, and he jumps up, runs through, and scares your buck off. And a lot of guys, because of that, they'll start backing off, like, oh, I'm spooking deer, I got to back off, I can't get that close. But my advice on that would be, if you're not occasionally kicking a deer out of there and swearing at yourself, saying Dan Infalt's crazy, you're not close enough. You're going to bump deer. That's all there is to it. Occasionally, you're going to ruin your hunt. And you have to push those limits, because if you're not pushing those limits, you're not getting close enough. Most of those mature bucks I shoot are on the border of closing time, and they're within 75 yards of that bed. If you're too far back, you're too far back. And the thing is, you can't, it's like a lot of people too want to inch in. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to start back here, and if I don't get him, I'll move in 50 yards. Well, if you don't get him day one, he already knows he's being hunted, and I'll try and kill him. It's like slapping him on the butt and saying, game on. You've let him know that you're hunting him. You got to go in for that kill the first time you hunt. If it don't work, you move on to the next spot. And so I'm literally scouting thousands of these spots. I'm moving daily.
The first time in, especially with your technique and style, and folks, you got to understand this. I get in people all the time, and they go, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. I go, whatever. I don't say whatever. I just say, okay. But
first time in is critical. Matter of fact, I just ripped apart my top whitetails and went down and looked at what, the stats on each one of them. I'm a stat kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And I think it was 8 out of my top 10 whitetails were taken out of the first time I ever hunted out of a tree.
80% of your top 10.
Exact. And of the top 2, it was the first time that year. The other 2, I mean. It was the first time I sat that tree that year. And that's not to say I don't sit a tree a couple times a year. I mean, there's certain trees I hunt 2 or 3 times a year. But it's really telling when you start looking at those stats.
Yeah, because I had a guy that I was hunting with this year, and he says, how come you saw a deer there, but you're not going back there? I said, no, because he already knows I'm there. It's not going to do me any good, because he already knows that I've been there. He says, how? I just said, they know.
They know.
I know I'm not a deer. All I know is they know, and I know. So I got to go find out where he's going to be next.
It's interesting, because I've sat back and you see a deer walk through a certain area. Then you move a little closer where you got an advantage point, and you watch him with binoculars, and you watch him for a couple of days, and you get the right wind, and you're going to move in and kill him. And you move in there, and maybe you decide you're not going to kill him. Maybe he's not quite as big as you thought, or maybe the smaller ones come out and go by, and they don't show any notice that they notice you. But go set up your buddy there the next day. Those deer never come back. You watch them 3 days in a row there.
Yep.
They know. Correct. They know. They smell that you've been there. Those things got noses that are unbelievable. They know you've been there.
Folks, this is not deer hunting 101. Well, it is, but it isn't. But Dan's dissected and analyzed, homogenized, and distilled everything. So he's one of these guys that has it down, but he lives whitetails and he figures it out. He thinks whitetails. And so many guys are hunting whitetails and they're not thinking whitetails. What do you think about that comment, Dan?
I think that's pretty true. A lot of guys think more of themselves than they really are. I mean, really have a grasp on where those deer are living and how they're moving through the woods if you want to kill them on a regular basis. It takes a lot of a lot of work.
On our farm, we had just a lot of small 6s and small 8s, and there were a lot of deer to actually kill. But we've all committed to let them go and let them grow. But still, once they get to that 3.5, 4.5, they're schooling us because I think there's
what happens a lot too is they learn your pattern. If you're hunting the same trees and you do what a lot of guys on these farms, they rotate through trees. They got stands set up and they rotate through them. If it's this wind, we hunt those stands. If it's this wind, we hunt those stands. And they'll have a lot of young bucks go through by them and they just never get those big bucks, or very rarely. And the thing is, those bucks, if they're there when they're 2 in their past, or they're under 3 in their past, it's under 4, they know where those stands are.
Yeah.
It's under 5, they got those stands down pat.
Well, they know when you leave.
That's their bedroom.
They know when you open the door or you're turning 18.
Like you walk in your house and your chair's upside down. You'd notice it. They know when somebody's in their area.
But it's so surprising.
And that's the thing, too, is I go on those farms with a buddy or something, and I look at how they're setting up, and I'll be thinking, okay, where aren't they hunting? What are they avoiding? And I'll go to some spot, and they'll be like, well, that's a dumb spot. You hunt there? No, not a dumb spot to me. There's nobody hunting there. Some deer cover, if nobody's going over there, that's probably where they are. As mature bucks find ways to hide and not find people. And, I spend a lot of time, like in the winter, following the deer around and just looking where they walk in the snow and stuff.
Yeah.
And it amazes me when you go into a hunting area that's full of trees and you follow a mature buck's track and you realize this thing just went 500 yards from its bed and never walked by a killable tree. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think those things are smarter than we give them credit.
No, I think we give them credit because they do know. In some places, they look right up at you. I mean, some of the stands, they just look right up at you.
Yeah.
And you get all the best scent control and blah, 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 blah. Does not matter. It's a wonderful game. I mean, it's a challenge. It just truly is. So what's the one big thing that you know today that you wish you knew? You've been hunting a long time. So the sooner you would have learned it, the more you would have accelerated your success.
I've been pondering that question for a while. It's a tough one. I think I probably peaked as a hunter kill-wise probably the late 90s. And my kills have gone downhill a little bit since then. And I think a lot of that has to do with drive and passion and stuff. But I think the big thing is I realize that it's really not that important to kill a big buck every year. When I look at my younger years, and I see this in young people now, and it bothers me a little bit. I put my family in strain, my kids and stuff. I wasn't around on Halloween ever. I hunted all the time, and I had to kill a buck. What I've learned is that's not what hunting's about. It's about the chase. It's about pursuing a buck, and it doesn't matter if you get him or not. It's the chase that we desire. Even when you kill one, you're not satisfied. You still want another one. You still want to go out there and do it again. It's the chase. If I had to pick one thing, I think that's what it is. For me, I learned that more about the chase and less about the kill.
I call it the journey. I've been fortunate to hunt some places, and I always remember the people and the places. And yeah, I've got some pictures or I got a head on the wall. But I always remember the other things and the conversations around the campfire, around the kitchen table, around the wood stove. They're as much as a trophy as the harvest.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's wrap up the show. I kind of, at the beginning, an hour or so ago, I mentioned your 3 to 5 things. I'm a beginner hunter and said, Bruce, here's 3 to 5 things I want you to do starting today. So next fall, you're going to be a better hunter. What do you think?
Do you want me to list 5 things that make you a better hunter by next fall?
Yep. What?
This is the first 4 are scout.
Scout. How about practice? Can I practice with my bow?
Yeah, you can practice. I think a guy's got to really, if you really want to be a trophy killer, you got to put some effort into it. It's not something that you can just go out there and do overnight. I mean, you can buy big whitetails. You can go out and lease the perfect property or whatever. But if you really want to be a hunter and learn how to kill deer, you got to go out and practice it. And it might go a little against the grain here. You're not going to become that great hunter from listening to podcasts or from watching a video or from watching a show. I mean, it's going to help you. It's going to give you tips, but you still got to go out there and wear out some boots. You got to get out there and learn these things. And I think when people scout, they want to go and they want to just walk a property and learn that property. And I think that's a big waste of time. I think you got to go straight to those bedding areas, learn those bedding areas, learn how deer come in and out of them. And most of the rest of it really doesn't matter, because if you're going to kill a mature buck, you're going to kill them within a short distance of that bedding area. We get back to what we were saying earlier about me going through that list of my top 10 bucks. 3 of them were shot in September, 3 of them were shot in November, and 4 of them were shot in October. And I bet you most people got them all in November because they're not hunting close enough to that bedding. For me, it's been pretty equal on those mature bucks. You can kill them all year round. It doesn't have to just be November if you're hunting correctly, if you're getting close enough to them. And that's really the thing, is you got to push those limits.
The only thing I can say is, and I've been taught by a lot of people, Dan included, I got a full page and a half of notes. The best time to find your buck for next year is the wintertime when everything shuts down. True or false?
I'd say that's a little bit true. I think the best time to find them is during the season. When you're tagged out, right when they're bedding there, during this time you can hunt them. But the second best time, which is the time that you probably would be out there looking, is right when the season ends. And don't misunderstand that and think when you're looking at bedding areas, you're looking at deer's beds in the snow or whatever. You're looking at winter beds. You're not. You're looking at the sign that was from last November and stuff, because those beds, you can still see them. So you're not looking for those fresh beds. You're looking for the ones from November or October. That's going to help you immensely. And then you'll learn that bedding area inside out. And if you kick a few deer out of there, so what? You're not hunting there till next year. But you get in there, get your intel, do as little damage as possible, get out, then go find another one. And you got to have a lot of those spots, because you're going to go into some of these and you're not going to kill something. And then if you go into it over and over and over again, those deer are going to figure it out. And case in point, I mean, me hunting public marshes, a lot of times, some guy will stumble into one of these bedding areas, see all the big rubs or something in the bedding area, and put up a stand and a trail camera. You'll see a beat trail going to it and hunt the piss out of it until it goes dead. And you watch that guy leave, and it'll take 2 seasons before deer start coming back in there. It's amazing how long they stay away. Yeah, I've seen it happen, yeah, on some remote bedding areas. So if you overhunt these spots, you'll burn them out. So you got to find a lot of spots. If you run out of spots, just put that stand on your back and start guessing what's bedding. Look at how the land lays out, and go into a point, set up on it when there's rubs coming out of the point. Say, well, probably coming out of bedding. And I do a lot of that too, and I'm successful doing that too. Walking those transition lines on the edge of a marsh, edge of a swamp, go out to an island, and I think they're going to be bedding off that point. I'm taking a guess at it and throwing a stand at it.
Because transition zones and edge is the same for elk as there are for whitetails, and that's one thing that's helped me be an elk hunter, is because elk are very, very similar. They like the fringes. Yeah, they like the dark timber during the day and all that. But when they're feeding and where they're going from here to there, it's all the edges and transition zones. And you find from the oak brush to the aspens to the dark timber, there's transition zones that the elk, they're going to be there. No question about it. I believe the same with whitetail. It's just on 100 acres rather than 100 square miles.
Right.
It's fun though, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the thing. It's that chase. It's just a thrill, especially when you start doing it with a purpose. I mean, if you really start learning those bedding areas, how deer come in and out of it, you start hunting with a purpose, and you're going to a certain spot to hunt a certain pattern. And when that deer gets up out of a bed 75 yards from you, comes to you and you kill it, you feel like you really accomplished something. It ain't like you're just sitting over a food plot and one comes wandering in, or you know what I'm saying? It's like you actually accomplished something. Your scouting worked out. I mean, there's a feeling of you did it.
I'll go back to Nebraska, and the wrong deer came out, but I finally figured it out. That piece of property, right. I hadn't hunted before. In 3 days, I figured it out. And I went, whoa, I was happy. I walked away. I couldn't have been happier.
Yeah.
Now I just have to do it again and again and again. But people like you help me immensely, again, because they're thinking, not hunting. And they think, and then they put application to it.
Yeah.
Rather than
it's about me helping you, you helping me, and others helping each other. You get that old school mentality where guys would never tell anybody their secrets and stuff. And I think that hunting as a whole is so much better when we all work together.
Right. And that's part of my podcast. That's part of what happens on my podcast. And I've got people now saying, Bruce, I'm going to start a podcast. I said, I'll help you up to a point. I'll tell you everything I know up to a point. Then it becomes a job, and I'm not going to mentor them or coach them. But it's just like conversations like this, take the bits and pieces and then you put it out there. And people get better because they say, wow, I hadn't thought of that. And then like all the time you're thinking, okay, exit entry. Okay, where's that bedding area? On what side of the hill? Okay, how could I do that differently? Yes, you have to move that stand because it's been there way too long. It has. I mean, but I can't tell you how many deer we killed on the concussion stand. But the stand stays up there. It's a ladder stand. It's been there forever. We used to take them during the archery season, then that way. Now we just take them during the rifle season. And I've got to move that stand because the deer know it's there. I mean, they're not going to come any place close to it during the archery season. I know that. I mean, that'll be interesting if I do what I need to do and move that. Well, I'm going to put up a single ladder stand, and take that one out of there. But if I do that, I'm not going to
get one of those regrets where you never get it done, and then you're out there this fall bow hunting, and one walks by 50 yards from you, looks at you, and turns around and runs. You don't want those regrets to hit you.
Oh, no, but one of my goals right now is to get a single ladder stand up, and it's not 50, 75 yards away from where this stand is. I'm going to move it. And I think,
that's all it takes.
That's going to make a difference on this one buck for sure. I regress. And Dan, it's just been a joy. Can we have you on again sometime?
Sure, anytime you want. This was fun.
This is good stuff, folks. And again, I'll end it with Dan Infalt from DIY Swamp Buck. Probably he's one of the best. And if you don't know about him, get on social media. How do people find you on social media, Dan?
Hunting Beast is what they look up. They can just Google my name too. All kinds of stuff comes up.
Yeah.
Videos and all kinds of crap.
Yeah, YouTube channel and everything. And he's out there. And you can just tell folks, we've been talking for an hour, and he wants you to become a better hunter. I want you to become a better hunter. And then if you become a better hunter, we want you to help other people become better hunters. So they enjoy it. They get the passion. They get the journey. And they get the camaraderie, because Wisconsin has a huge hunting tradition, just absolutely huge. But that's slowly waning away. Why? Because the guy that started me hunting is now 76 years old, and he doesn't hunt so much anymore. I still do, but he doesn't. And so we've got to make sure we're bringing new people in. And there's a term that a friend of mine, Meadow Caulfield in Minnesota, uses, and she's adult onset hunting. And you're going to hear more about that. And people are writing about that because more adults are realizing, wait a minute, it isn't just about hunting. It isn't hunting. I'm out there experiencing. I'm out there learning new skills. I'm challenging myself. There's where hunting is growing exponentially, because people realize that, yes, I love deer in the freezer. I love cooking up backstraps and tenderloins. Love it to death. But also I love
18 feet closer to God.
Huh?
Being up in a tree. I said, there's something about being 18 feet closer to God. Being up in a tree, just sitting back and having time to think. We live in such a fast-paced world that a guy needs to just have some tree time. I took 2 new hunters out, got them bucks this year. To me, that was more important than me just to see those new hunters really succeed. And that's important, too, that they succeed so that they're happy and they keep coming back.
Yeah, well said. Well, sir, again, it's just been a pleasure, and I look forward to meeting you. Do you ever go to the Iowa Deer Classic or any of the shows?
Occasionally. I'll probably make the Madison one this year.
Okay. I'm going to HEA, and then I'll be in Iowa Deer Classic for sure. And then just hopefully when I'm in Wisconsin, I typically spend a month in Wisconsin in the fall doing podcasts and hunting and seeing some of my old friends from college. But anyway, hopefully we can connect one night.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Again, Dan, thank you so much for being a guest on Whitetail Rendezvous.
You run a great show, Bruce. Keep up the great work.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time.